Mr. Reddit Man presents. Students of Reddit, what's your craziest substitute teacher story? Some friends and I have had one that we call motivational sub. He was a retired veteran who would spend the first 15-30 minutes of class giving everyone a motivational speech. We ended up learning important life lessons while simultaneously not getting anything done for the class. We had a teacher similar to that, and you would get out of work by talking to him about Jesus. He also would not shut up about having a wife and kids and the fact he used to surf in his younger days. Also, this was at a public school. As a teacher, I had students report to me that a sub was giving them instructions on how to do a hand job with lotion. They were the most naive/adorable freshmen I ever had, and they were completely terrified. I wish I was kidding. Another sub years later was talking to them about how he wishes he could die under a tree smoking pot. That is super messed up. Did he get in any trouble? I feel like that is something that will get you on the sex offenders registry. An older woman at that. She was excused from the school. On that same note, I had a frequent sub at my high school get caught jacking off in front of a special ed class. We had a super old, super racist sub. Lady walked with a walker and could barely see the hand in front of her face, so how TF she was still subbing I'll never know, but whatever. She subbed my chemistry class in 7th grade once and told the only black kid in my class back in my day your kind would not be allowed here. It was bad. It became a huge thing because nearly the entire class lodged complaints and then the students' parents got involved. Being a kid at the time, I do not know what exactly was said or done, but I do know that she never subbed at our school again. Once had an old Russian woman as a substitute in middle school. She was nice. Taught us how to count to 10 in Russian and stuff. One student asked what she was before she was a teacher, and she said she was a dancer. When asked if she could dance for us, she says, with a straight face, "You'll have to pay a lot of money to see that, because she danced ballet at the Bolshoi, right? Right? Sure. Let's go with that." Graduated high school student, we had a sub who literally wrote us up if we made any noise, like a cough, sniffle, anything. The bitch even called down both teams just to make us quiet. Then she tried to say the quietest girl in our class actually spoke. Our teacher believes us because she knew we are not disrespectful. This was back in high school. Duck Ms. Renner. Palindromastich. It is always weird when you have a substitute teacher who writes a class up for misbehaving when the kids are not doing anything wrong. I had a sub who was threatening to give us all lunch detention if we spoke in an art class. I ended up lying to him and told him I had to go to the bathroom, but instead went straight to one of the administrators and told her what was going on. So she trailed behind me as I walked back to class and talked to him, allowing us to talk without fear of lunch detention. I'm a high school teacher. One year I had a very silly but lovable class. I was away at a teacher workshop for 2 days and had a sub. One of my students told the sub that he had swamp ass and needed to go to the bathroom. Had it been me, I would have just told him to go and honestly would have chuckled. I do not lose my malarkey when a kid says words like ass ... or really any swear word unless it's derogatory or directed at someone in a mean way. Well, this turned into the sub having every administrator in the building come and the kid shouting F-bombs at all of them. She just lost it over a 10th grader saying the word ass and needlessly escalated the situation. One of the quieter kids in class actually emailed me telling me what happened and that she did not think it was that kid's fault. She was not even friends with him, and the fact that she felt she needed to stick up for him was enough for me to know it was not entirely on him. When I returned, my principal called me in to tell me what had happened. He and I both agreed the sub was at least partly to blame. We still had to have the kid apologize for all the F-bombs, but he got no other punishment. We had this 70-something-year-old man who used to be in the military that would substitute for my high school, and every time he substituted, he would challenge one of the guys in the class to a push-up competition, usually a football player, and he almost always won. 70 and still doing push-ups. This guy's gonna live forever. We were in Sisters, which was weightlifting class in high school, and we had a substitute. Short, super muscular dude. Just seemed like a douchebag in every way. Well, we had a kid in our class who was going D1 in football. Extremely strong for a 17-year-old. Pretty certain he was in fact on steroids. Anyways, he gets down on the bench and hits 225 for like 12. Pretty impressive. This duck-in substitute teacher sees this, walks over to the bench next to his, loads up like 315, and proceeds to rep it for like 9. He then racks it, looks at the kid, looks at the rest of us all watching, and goes, "The duck's up. Lol, that was so surreal." Some 40-year-old meathead felt like he needed to show up a 17-year-old in front of a bunch of other kids. Teacher here ... There is once of the students call the hooker because she always puts on the thick blue eyeliner and all kinds of makeup. She is constantly late. One time she missed an entire class and I was asked to cover for her. The students constantly complain about her. From what they have said, she never gives any work or anything to keep them busy. She demands that they sit quietly while she talks on her cell phone and watches dance tutorial videos on YouTube. At first I did not believe them, but one day I heard a fight coming from the class she was covering, so I called administration and rushed over. I found two kids beating the malarkey out of each other on the floor while she was watching from the teacher's desk, some lady freaking out over speakerphone, and a dance video on the computer. Unfortunately, our school is desperate for anyone with a pulse, so they refuse to get rid of her. Reminds me of my old school. We had a sub who the kids always claimed fell asleep. Lo and behold, one day he subs for the guy down the hall who has an inclusion teacher and fell asleep at the desk. He still would get jobs though. My senior year, my English teacher threw her hip out, so we had a sub for a few months. We were doing a unit on Hamlet and the sub made us take a test where we had to identify the page number and stanza of various quotes. So we would have had to memorize the entire play. Obviously, everyone failed miserably. The A student had a meltdown. It was nuts. First thing the teacher did when she was back was to talk malarkey about the sub and invalidate very grade we received while the sub was in charge. A few months later we walked into class and here is the same sub. She told us to just work on whatever assignment our teacher had us working on. It was April of senior year, so yay, we were all screwing around. My friend had drawn a picture and I think wrote the word malarkey on the drawing, some minor swear word. Sub intercepts the paper and loses her malarkey. Tells us that we're completely inappropriate and disrespectful. That we're going to be suspended. She's calling the principal. Principal shows up and sneers telling him what happened. He asks to see the picture and asks us what we're supposed to be doing instead. We tell him we haven't not been assigned anything. He looks at the sub and says, "What do you expect? You did not give them any work to do. Guys, stop drawing pictures and just keep the volume down so you do not bother the other classes," and walks out. The sub was fuming. She slapped a kid twice while he was having a panic attack. Apparently she was trying to slap him out of it. We had quite a few unstable substitutes in middle school. This is the only one that was not allowed back at the school, and that was just because the kids' parents were like the only rich PPL in the city and paid for a lot of the school's things. Our freshman year BO teacher was out for a month and we got a sub teacher who was just out of college. He was really inexperienced and awkward for a teacher. He printed letters to hand to each of us and our parents on the first day, and in it literally says that his hobby is video games. One time I and several other classmates went to ask him a question about cell wars, and he accidentally did the pointer finger inside whole hand gesture while trying to explain me how things travel through cells. It was very awkward. He was blushing so hard while we all held back our laughter. That poor teacher lol. Sometimes I wonder if that moment still haunts him every night. We once had a sub that knew how to write Arabic and would frequently write it on the board because kids were interested. One day he wrote a bunch of Arabic stuff on the board and said that if the students wanted to try to write it on paper they could. Well, the principal walked in and saw Arabic all over the front board and multiple kids writing in Arabic in their notebook. It was awkward. Probably ISN not the craziest story, and that teacher was really cool. It was just awkward. I have had a few weird substitute teachers. One was a very old man who told my entire 8th grade English class that we were all going to jail and he was gonna bail us out. Another was a very old lady who was hypersensitive about the Irish potato famine and mentioning it would make her break down and cry. She also would take Sharpies and write on the whiteboards and yell at us when we were freaking out and telling her those are not erasable. Another weird one was a substitute teacher who asked us to stand up and introduce ourselves by saying our names, dream college, and dream careers. Everything was alright until he got to one of the ROTC kids, and that kid said he wanted to join the Air Force and the guy straight up told him he was too fat for the Air Force and no one would hire a lazy fatus like him. My whole class went silent and I could tell that kid was hurt badly. He was not even fat. Then it gets to one of the girls who plays volleyball in our class and he tells her she has nice boobs. By the time it got to me I stood up and said my name is U/Wind Easton ... and I'm not that open about my life. He kept pressuring me to stand up again and give the rest of the introduction. I repeatedly declined and left the classroom to go to the restroom to force him to move on and avoid any creepy comments. Multiple people reported that substitute and our teacher was appalled when she came back the next day to hear what that guy did. Never saw him again, so in hoping he was banned from substituting in my high school. I have had lots, most of which happened years ago, but I'll share the one that irritates me the most. In middle school, we had an older lady, maybe 60 over 70, subbing for our math class who had put on a movie for us to watch. During the movie, we were allowed to work on some extra class work we had. I was eating some sun chips and got up to throw away the bag, then went back to my seat. Keep in mind, the sub was standing next to the trash can, so I had to walk in front of her in order to throw away the bag. When I walked back to my chair, I sat down and started to work again, and then I feel this woman standing behind me. She followed me to my seat, demanding to know where I have been. Confused, I told her I was in the class. Then, she starts yelling at me, insisting I was skipping the class. At this point, the whole class was staring at her. This went on for some time until someone finally decided to tell her I was there the whole time. She did not apologize or anything. She only scowled and walked away. When I was in 5th grade, we had a sub for the day who spent a lot of her time talking about traveling. At one point she told us about a strange blue building in Chile that she had been brought to, where she was introduced to an alien. I remember looking around the room and a few other people were looking around like yo. What? Did she just say she met an alien? And she went on to tell us all about how inside the building magnetism was reversed, how the alien showed her her own past and future. She said she knew she'd teach us, and she'd seen us all before. She'd spent her entire life in that cave, from her perspective, from the moment she entered on. But when she died, and she told us how she died, heart attack in her 50s, she woke up, or whatever, left the cave, and it had been 3 days, so that stuck with me for 20 years. My grandma was my substitute teacher once. I had my great aunt as a substitute once. She was actually really mean and unpopular, so it got hella awkward for me because, well, you see, beforehand she dropped the tidbit that we were related to the class. I had a great uncle who was everyone's favorite bus driver. Did not help my popularity any though. Had a sub suggest I do a reading out loud drunk, because the character I was reading for was drunk and seen. He backtracked instantly when he remembered he was talking to a high school student, not college. You have made it until the end of this video. Now listen here, and listen here closely. Like and subscribe for more videos by me, Mr. Reddit Man. Thanks for watching.